Patience, if we could all rise and we'll do the prayer and the pledge. Do the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And deliver us from temptation. Deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and power, and glory, forever and ever. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right, I'm gonna welcome everybody to the third. I'm gonna welcome everybody to the Tuesday, April 19th, 2022 council meeting. We want to welcome anybody who's on Zoom, KGIW, who's here broadcasting as well, and any other media who might be tuning in. Ms. Ramsey, call the roll.
Davis. Here. St. Columbia. Crockett. Franklin. Etherly. Ford. 5 present, 1 absent.
Okay, so quorum is present. The first item on the agenda will be the minutes of March the 1st. Ms. Ramsey.
All of the minutes were sent out in your packet for March 1st, 15th, and April 5th.
Mrs. James and that message in
They're on the agenda, actually. Any questions about the minutes?
I'm going to accept March 1st, March 15th, and April 5th.
Mr. Franklin moves that we adopt the minutes from March the 1st. Is there a second?
No, that's not my motion.
What's your motion?
You didn't hear March 1st?
You want to do all 3 of them at the same time?
To get over.
So any objections to doing all 3 of them at the same time?
There's no objection.
Is there a second? Mr. Evans seconds the motion. Motion is to approve the minutes from March 15th, 1st through March 15th, April 5th.
Etherly. Yes. Ford. Yes. Davis. Yes. Crockett. Yes. Franklin.
Yes.
5 yes, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Mr. Turner, you're recognized.
I apologize to the city council. I haven't, we've been having some issues with our software, and as you can see, when you look at the first page, I couldn't change the date on it, so I had to write in March 31st. So I really was having some trouble pulling it off today and getting the information to you. So I haven't had time to actually go through the financial report thoroughly to give you any information. And so, like I said, I'd like to apologize for that. So that you guys can review it. If you have any questions, ask me at the next council meeting. But I haven't actually gone through it thoroughly. Gone through to give you an accurate report.
So I have a couple questions. I got just 2 good questions. Well, maybe 4. But the first one, like with the water department, you help with the water?
Yes.
Okay. Can this body get for the next meeting, and I think you ought to invite the water people here as well, but like the total accounts is for Helena is 1,602. we have issues, but if we have had water, sewer rates increase, sanitation increase, like we should, like the water department should be $600,000 on the sanitation department, right?
It should not be.
Right. So then again, this is the last one. I'm gonna let you go. So when it was declared a emergency in the water department, this body still has not yet received all the bills from the storm that the mayor declared. Have we received a final account of those bills?
Okay, I spoke with the office manager, so I do have a list of what she thinks are the bills that are associated with the emergency, right?
Okay.
I think the last couple of meetings that we have, things have happened, we've adjourned, we haven't gotten to that point.
Okay.
I did have the overtime numbers for Mr. Elton, and I did have those numbers for you, because you've asked a couple of times, but we never quite got to.
Okay.
I don't have today because I didn't think we would get to that point.
Yes, sir.
But I do have that information.
Yes, sir.
So it's no problem for me to send you an email, send the council an email telling you, but I think it was in the neighborhood of about $500,000.
Okay, so can we, later on, I hope the body and I could come up with a date where we can meet just to deal with that issue, because it's a pressing issue that we still don't know who is paid and is it true that the governor can call it a disaster or the mayor?
Is the what?
Did the governor call it a disaster or the mayor call it a disaster?
You have to ask.
The city attorney. I wait to ask the city, but that's all I have, Mr. Attorney. Thank you so much. But can you have that for everybody around the table? Ms. Crocker didn't have an email, so if you call me, I'll hand you hers to her.
I have the information. I just haven't given it to you guys, but I do have it.
Yes, sir.
So it's no problem getting it to you.
And thank you so much. But these are the numbers.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions on the treasurer's report? Pastor Von Daniels here, invited to speak. We usually let guests go, so you don't have to sit through everything. If there's no objection, if you'd like to go ahead and come up, we can talk about Violet Circle first, so y'all don't have to stay around for the whole thing. If there's no objection, everybody okay with that? Pastor Von Daniels lives in Violet Circle, which is off Valley Drive. And at one time it was a circle and was being developed, and it was considered in the city limits. I mean, not in the city limits, it was considered a city road. Sometime during the middle of all those great plans, the development never happened. The circle was broken into two, and it is still considered a city road, even though there's one house on each side of it, and you can only do a circle. So this is mostly for the public's benefit. So in the past, the city council approved and we got estimates, and I believe, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 was the lowest estimate, I believe, to fully pave Violet Circle. So anyway, one of the things that we decided to do at the last meeting was to invite you here, and also the request made for me to contact you, which that's what we were just talking about. I did this morning and left a voicemail, and we had talked before, sort of in a parking lot conversation about trying to work something out. I drove over there this morning and looked at it, and that's kind of where it is. So having said that, Ron Dennis, would you like to be recognized to speak?
Yes.
Okay, so you're recognized.
I just want to first, I thank the council for allowing me this opportunity to come and to speak. I believe it was probably March of last year that the council did vote to repave the street. I've had several issues with this street since I've been living there. I recently had an issue with a rim on my wife's car due to the water and it washing out the street. And so I'm here today to just ask the council to move forward with whatever their recommendation was that they had come up with a year ago in resolving this matter. It's costing me money, and I pay taxes and follow all the rules and regulations as any other citizen. And, you know, I don't think that it's my fault that it wasn't developed. I just purchased the house. And so it's a city street. It's in bad repair. Every time it rains, every time it snows, I get a different pothole, another pothole. And it's been patched several times. You can see if you walk down the street, you can see that it's different textures and all of that, and it's breaking up. And so I just ask that the council would consider to go with whatever it was that they had, the solution that they had come up with. Thank y'all so much for your time.
Mr. Franklin?
Mr. Dave, Reverend Dave, that is the street, right?
Yes, sir.
You have not charged the city with all those limbs in the city street. You bought a chainsaw, correct? And you got to cut all them trees that fell in the city street, right?
Yes, sir.
And you had to pay somebody to come move all those limbs to the side of the road, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you're aware of the store we just recently had, right?
Yes, sir.
Over on Richmond, right?
Yes, sir.
You're aware of that, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember how all those trees fell over on that street?
Yes, sir.
Did the city come pick the limbs up?
I'm not sure who picked them up, sir.
Hey, did. I just feel like a city street is a city street. I don't think there's nothing else we could do. Mayor, it's in your court. I think the city has, the city council has spoken, authorized this job to be done. It is you. You always said the buck stop with you. And the buck been sitting with you, Mr. Mayor. And I do believe that Mr. Dan don't want no shortcut. He don't want anything but that street that we own fixed. Now, you can call some of your good friends in because you know you're good at getting people in here to do what you want them to do. You know, you'll give a serial contract 5 here and 5 there. You know, you're good at that. So why don't you be so good to do a serial contract 5 times, get somebody $5,000 this week, get somebody $5,000 next week until you get to the magic $30,000. So, Mr. Davis, I'm in favor of your street getting fixed. I do believe that not your street, but the city street where you drive to get to your property. I do believe that I'm in favor of that. We made the motion and voted unanimously to get that fixed. And it's not us. Whatever I can do in my power, once the city attorney speaks about it, I'm willing to do whatever we need to do.
Ms. Crockett?
I was about to say that, I mentioned that you're saying that you want us to move forward. I think we've done all that we could do. And the reason that I asked you to come, because I was getting conflicting information. The mayor said that he had talked to you and y'all had come to an agreement that you was gonna work with him and get his street fixed. And you told me that he told you that he was gonna have the street fixed, and I'm just trying to get the hearsay, she say, we say, so it won't look like the council's not doing what they're supposed to do. That's why I asked you to come, and I appreciate you coming.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Mayor, you told me that he said he's gonna work with you to.
And we did, we agreed to work together and try to work out something. Is that right, Pastor?
We agreed that you yes, we talked in the parking lot, and we agreed that you were going to pave the street as well as some other work that needed to be done, and you were waiting on some money to come in.
Well, I would characterize it this way. We agreed to try and work together to work out something, provided we have the money to do it. There's some other projects in town that need it also. And I think this needs attention. It's not a question of, as I've said, I probably said then, if we could pave all the streets, trust me, I'm a politician, I would be paving every single one we have. But we don't have enough money to pay them all, and certainly not all, even all the ones that need it. And so it's a prioritization process, and it's also a process that involves adequate money and timing, cash flow. But thank you, Ms. Crockett, for kind of, I will say that most of the things that get attention are things that it's hard to plan for. It's hard to get it for the city sometimes without somebody else prioritizing it or bringing it to my attention. So I'm glad you did put it on the agenda. If we could follow up, and I did go out there this morning. It's not the first time. I mean, we talked about it a couple years ago. I was told that it wasn't a city street at first by some of the people that had been here longer than me, and it turned out it was a city street. It is a city street. So I think we put down some gravel and that kind of thing, but that's not
working
been
against it.
sufficient over the years. But I've been aware of it, and we've communicated, and I'm certainly a big fan of Ron Daniels for both what he does in the community, for the college and for the church. And I'm glad, and I hope we can figure something out, that I hope we can afford to do it, period.
I just need to say, that is not what you told me. You told me last week that it's only one house on this street after we voted over a year ago to do this. Now you've come up with some streets that have gotten into worse situations over the years. But you make it seem like it's like you and him have talked and he's agreed to wait to get his street fixed, and you told him that some more streets, but now you're saying that I see on the agenda somewhere where we're discussing Holly Street and whatever other street that we
come over to my house and meet. No. This body approved for you to do something. See, it's just like whatever you get on your soapbox and say the city council work with you, but here it is, we should have to beg you. It matter over a year ago. You got here and tell your supporters that we don't help you. The house sits on Valley Circle. It's a driveway. And they was trying to develop it then, it was their fault.
I'm not blaming anybody.
Well, I just said, unless you interrupt me. Respect my time. I'm just asking you, as the leader of this city, lead on this issue. Don't try to half-step nothing. Don't half-step, because if we, Mr. Mayor, you do a lot of things that we ask you not to, like all these trees. I got some bills here. Show that you paid somebody $4,000 one week, $5,000 the next day, and it was all cut down the same trees. When we said the last meeting, I talked about that. Those cut down the same trees. It was over $40,000 for the same trees on 4th and 7th Street, 8th and 9th Street. Miss Ray, you remember those bills I was telling you about? All those tree bills, and it was to the same people. I know some of these people had tree services, and I was asking the question: do those vendors that you use, pay that $50 for an occupation license? You had 5 vendors that you paid over $50,000 to in 1 week for some trees. But then you didn't come to this body because you knew how to split it up. Well, Mr. Mayor, split that up for Mr. Daniels. You good at doing serial contracts.
Mr. Franklin, if we can stick, first of all, Mr. Franklin, you're making a lot of allegations, as you always do, without any facts.
Okay, do you want to go get the facts of these?
We have, Mr. Franklin, you didn't want me, you asked me not to interrupt you. We're not talking about trees anyway, we're talking about Mr. Ron Daniels' street. The tree budget and the road budget are not the same. And as Mr. Ron Daniels knows, when he first contacted me about this a couple of years ago, I had our department heads go out there and visit with you. And this is something normally the department heads will do. They at first thought it was not a city street. Then they were corrected. It is a city street. Of course, I just take their advice, and particularly them, because they're the road crew. They know more about the roads than I do. But I've been working on this with you longer than the council has, as I can recall. It's just that $30,000 is a lot out of our road budget to pave a road with one house on it compared to all the other needs. And it's not, and we're going to try our best to make you happy as we can with the money and resources we have, and at the same time deal with the other issues we have. So anyway, having said that, Mr. Valley has a question.
A few things that I've noticed about this discourse. First, every appropriation that we discussed was last year. When I leaned back and went across and talked to Mr. Turner, I was asking him whether there was appropriation for this year. Because one of the things about it is there must be appropriation for this year, and then the second thing would be the bids are old at this point, and I don't know what those bids should be better for the contract of all of those bids as it relates to what is already out there. Right. While the bid was done, he did not do the job, and he's already stated the reason why he didn't do the job last year. I think that as we're going forward, we need to make sure there's appropriation for this year, and make sure that you may have to rebid it, but the person may stand by the bid. I don't know whether they'll stand by the bid, but it seems like the mayor wants to do a lesser job than the 30,000. I'm not speaking for the mayor. I'm just listening to what he said already. He is inclined to do something lesser than the 30,000 that was done. Excuse me. But the short answer what I'm saying is there's have to be appropriation for this year. I don't know if you have to rebid it because the person may stick by what the bid was last year. So I have not had a discussion with that corporation or person entity. Mayor has all those conversations, but those are things that we have to be concerned about going forward. It is a city street. Pastor Daniels lives on at the end of that street. It has significant issues, and it should be dealt with. But
with that, I yield to anyone else on the body.
And I would just say, again, clarify, it's not I don't want to. I would love to. What I want to do is try to figure out how we can make you happy and also other residents happy who have serious road issues as well. That's my job as mayor, is to try and make sure that our road budget, which is not very big, is prioritized in the best way we possibly can. And if we can do that and make you happy, and you have been very patient, then I'm for that. And if we had $30,000 to do everything else, believe me, I'm be for it. We have to spend it on road projects anyway, so it's not that so much as how we disperse it. And I appreciate your diligence. But we do, and Mr. Valley's correct in reminding us that we need to appropriate it for 2021. 22, and we need to, well, I guess it depends, as he said, on the bids and where they stand by the bids or not, but we do need to reappropriate it, and I'm open to doing that if we want to. Can we go move forward with that?
Yes, well, sir, if correct me if I'm wrong, but the conversation we had behind you, man, was, he says that there was sufficient money already in the budget appropriated for this.
Yeah, I didn't specifically, when I did the budget, I didn't specifically appropriate the money for that particular project, but there is enough in appropriations to cover the project.
There's enough in the road budget. There's road money budgeted and appropriated.
Yes, sir.
So you still think we need to appropriate?
It still would be over $5,000. And you still have the issue of the bidding, certified. You've already bidded last year, now the bonds of caution. If the person stands by the bid, I don't see an issue, but if the person's not gonna stand by the bid, we'd have to rebid it.
So what we're talking about really is an authorization to go with $5,000 to do it. It's already appropriated.
It's above yes, thank you, Mayor. The spending is above $5,000, which is funded above the mayor's spending authority. And there would be an authorization, the mayor had to, the city council had to reauthorize the mayor to spend the money for this project. Because it was last year's budget, not this one.
Is there a motion to reauthorize this project in fiscal 22? Ms. Monica moved and Mr. Franklin seconded the motion that we reauthorize the project on Ivy Circle. Any questions about the motion? Not call roll.
Yes. Etherly?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Crockett? Davis? I have 5 yes, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Any other questions of Mr. Von Daniels? And then if we could set up an appointment with our street department, public works department at your street, if possible, would be what I prefer, so that everybody can, literally walk it and see what we're talking about in real times. If you could work with me on that, and we can coordinate that with our department heads, say the next week to 2 weeks. Is that fair?
I mean, we drove it at 8:59 a day. We can meet at 8:59 tomorrow.
Well, I can't promise you my department heads can.
Okay. But whenever they're available, I'll make myself available.
Okay. Well, I'll let them know, and I'll send them your phone number as well, and we'll try to coordinate that.
One thing for clarity, in the motion, I didn't say this was Franklin before we voted. The reauthorization is for the full 30,000. We're bringing everything from last year to this year. Is that correct? Yes. It was that your vote?
It was actually Ms. Davis.
We are together. By acclamation, all of y'all agreeing that the reaffirmation is for the full 30,000. Is that correct? Okay. I heard all 5 of you say that's correct. I just wanted to make sure.
Can you have a question, Mr. Von Daniels, or for me? Is it about this project?
Sure is.
Do you have a question, any more questions for Mr. Von Daniels?
I'll see him outside, but I won't ask for you.
Yes, just, can he sit down is what I'm
Yes,
asking.
he can.
Thank you, Mr. Von Daniels.
Thank you. City Council
Mr.
President.
Franklin, go for it.
So, Council,
the last meeting we adjourned, and I know it's not on the agenda, it's a lot of things that you all are not aware of, that I'm aware of. The mayor just said I was making false allegations. And then she said, Mayor, I was making false allegations. See, the mayor has a spending limit of $5,000 on 3/10, which was last month. The mayor spent $4,600. On 2/9/22, the mayor spent $950. On 2/7/22, the mayor spent $48.50. On 2/7, again, the mayor spent $47.20. Again, the mayor spent on 2/17, he paid a bill for $4,480. Again, on 2/14, Sweetheart's Day, Valentine's Day, the mayor went again spent $4,100. Again, on 2/17, a couple days later, the mayor spent $4,100 again. Again, on the great day I was born, 3/24/22, not a day year, but the mayor spent $4,400. Again, the mayor turned around again and spent on another day, he spent $4,500. Turned around again, the mayor spent $4,200. Again, a couple days later, the mayor did it again, $4,700. And these are all bills for cutting trees and stuff like that, that the mayor, all by the same people that were serial contracts that were not bid out to this body. So, Mr. Mayor, I do believe that you're texting in the meeting, Mayor, and that's so disrespectful. You would text while we're in the city council meeting. But I want to let you know that these are, Mr. Valley, as a city attorney, and these contracts
I
are,
haven't seen.
okay, these are bills that were paid, excuse my seat.
All right, so I was trying to set this meeting with our department heads, Mr. Von Daniels, because that's a lot more interesting than what Mr. Franklin was talking about, frankly. And the stuff you're reading off was during the storms, and they were directed by our department, our public works department head, because they were trying desperately to get this, and we still have a lot more to go.
Right.
And yeah, I signed them, they're legal, there's nothing illegal about it. They were cleaning up, picking up trees. But let me talk, Mr. Franklin. They were hired and directed by the Director of Public Works. And as far as I know, there isn't anything appropriate about any of it. We desperately need to get those trees cleaned up, and everybody in the city knows it. So why you would be against that, I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not against it.
We still have trees that have to be cleaned up in the city. And it costs money to do that, and it was appropriated.
Community as well, Mr. Mayor.
That's right, and we're still, I've got a meeting tomorrow. Mr. Franklin, you talking over me and interrupting, same thing you said I shouldn't do to you.
I
So,
apologize.
thank you.
Let's go, because I want to finish the discussion.
Well, this is not on the agenda.
I actually said
So-
a lot of stuff to the agenda.
That's wonderful, but it's not on the agenda right now.
We can-
We just dispensed with the Violet Circle issue with Mr. Von Daniels. We reauthorized it. It's been appropriated, we're told. And I just texted my department heads and asked them to meet us and to get with Mr. Von Daniels and try to set the meeting with me included at the street in question as soon as possible. So that's where we are now. We're moving on. We're moving on, Mr. Franklin. All right, the first item on the agenda is the animal shelter. Now, I think what I passed out earlier, which was not in your packet,
What are we talking about?
was just clarification from Philip Fields about a question that was raised earlier. It was a good question. So I asked Mr. Fields if he would put it in writing and get the exact answer on whether or not we could put an animal shelter at the landfill, and if so, where, and how would it be approved by ADEQ. As you can see in the message, for those at home who don't have it, it's an email that Mr. Fields is the engineer. Philip Fields is the engineer for the landfill. And he sent an email to inquire from the state, because there was a question of what the state and federal regulations might be about putting a shelter back at the landfill where it has been for many years, or used to be. And the answer that came back, as you can see, is that the location where it used to be is it can be done, it can be put there again without violating or needing approval from any state regulatory bodies. So in other words, the location, the permanent location is the same as the old permanent location near the front of the landfill and would not need approval by the state. So I just want to pass that out and make you aware of it. The only thing as far as business goes on the animal shelter would be, I brought this up, but it wasn't on the agenda. And I announced that the Bissell Foundation had generously agreed to challenge us with a $50,000 match for a shelter. If we would match it with $50,000, I was asked to contact Walmart and a few others, and I have, particularly the Walmart Foundation and a couple of others have not gotten any. I've talked to him. I haven't spoken. I left a message for the local Walmart manager. But as far as the Walmart Foundation goes and others, they are looking into the possibility, but I don't have any news on that. But I have sought financial support. In the meantime, the one thing I would ask you to consider tonight is an appropriations, not an authorization, but an appropriations to match the Bissell Foundation grant of $50,000. Let's see. That would make it a total of 100,000. And as far as before we actually did it, took bids, you'd have to take bids, and you would have more questions and more information you would need. This would just be the appropriations, 50,000 towards $50,000 match is all that would be. We wouldn't actually spend it yet until you approved it again. We took bids.
I have a question.
Well, you have a question about
Yes, sir.
this issue? Okay, Mr. Brown.
Do you all remember when Kathy Bissell came and offered the city $100,000? How did it drop down to $50,000? When she first stood here and said that she would offer $100,000 to build a new animal, do you all remember that? Yeah, so
Ms. Bissell came to a council meeting? We are asking her, but instead of asking me.
Ms. Sandy was here, but we don't have to argue about it.
I'm just asking, is that your question, whether Ms. Bissell was here? Physically
She
and
on Zoom. You know, we had a.
She was on Zoom.
Right. So you
And
know.
you're saying that she offered $100,000.
$100,000. That's when the animal shelter first shut down, she offered the $100,000 from the Bissell Foundation. People didn't know who she was, so everybody said Bissell vacuum cleaner. That's how that came across. So I'm asking, what happened from the 100 to the 50?
I don't know, but I
So
don't.
can you ask that question?
I don't specifically recall. I'm not saying she never.
Sandy, do you remember?
I'm not saying that she did not say $100,000, but she is saying 50,000.
But I'm asking this, Mayor.
I don't know the answer to stop my money.
I'm not yelling at you.
I'm answering your question.
But I'm not yelling at you. I'm just asking.
You're not listening to my answer either.
You're asking, see, you don't know, but other people around the table heard the conversation. You know, you want us to appropriate $50,000, but if she initially said $100,000 to start an animal shelter, Ms. Ramsey, am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm correct on it. So, Mr. Mayor, all I'm asking is this question. If you want us to, now we have two animal, you have an animal person that you got, we got two animal people out there. We are appropriating that, but I don't think the city, let me see what you got. You got Acre Mission out there, reach out to people like Acre Mission to see if those people who have a 501c3, or the work of those people who are released from prison or anything, to see can they get involved with an animal shelter. That's something that you ought to use, because see, for us getting back into animal control, we got two people that you can put, or you can send the other person off for training to help the Bissell family with this part that you have. I'm not saying not give anything, but you started shoving us what the Bissell family gave us, but you're not saying what would you like to give? We just gave an employee. We can't match $50,000. Can you tell me when we allocated $50,000 for donations for that amount of money?
What's your question? are you asking where somebody's donated? No, we don't have it in the budget because
Okay, so
they
how
haven't
do you
given
give
it
it?
yet,
It's
but
not-
she is trying to give it now. And my only question to you is, do you want to match it with 50,000 in the city's money or not? That's the question before the council. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Ford.
There was just mentioned about an employee or two employees or whatever. Those two full-time people, their salary probably would amount to almost a $50,000 in-kind match, wouldn't it?
We are not currently paying anybody to do animal control as a salaried position, so that wouldn't be accurate.
How are they being paid?
They're being paid to do other things, but they're being given those duties. So, for example, the police department just did some training on animal control issues. You know, as you well know, you have to have training for especially law enforcement officers before you can expect them to enforce anything. They just got back from the training, and they're not getting paid extra for that, but it's traditionally something that police departments and code departments in Arkansas have done. Even though they're probably one of the best known, and one of the trainers of the police department from Cabot is actually paid in code. So that's not unusual. But there is no special. Go ahead, Mr.
The city council actually passed in the budget, there was $25,000 in animal control already.
All right.
And I can understand that now, but that's why I was asking for a clarification, whether two employees were being paid for, and that would probably constitute a match of in-kind services. That's on what I was asking. It wasn't explained whether they were just writing tickets or whether they were actually doing something else with animal control, like maybe picking them up. I don't know where you put them, but that's what I was asking. I was asking for clarification. That was my statement. If you had two people that were paying, that seems like that would be almost $50,000 match.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
Mr. Taylor, what you
And the
saying?
question, and you're not recognized, Mr. President, and the question is for, before, was a cash match, not in kind. There was a $25,000 appropriation, and you could use that. But it would cost you, I would say, at least $25,000 in other issues like vet bills and food and supplies, something we've asked about, in addition to the shelter itself. But you could do that, and then you could come back and decide what to do about that later. I mean, that's certainly an option if you wanted to just add 25 to it, to leverage that 50,000. It has to be given for a shelter. You still have to take bids. You still have to do all that. You also have to approve it again, but it would have to be spent on the shelter to be meet the guidelines of the grant. I hope that clarifies it. Any questions? Any other questions about the Bissell Foundation grant or matching it? So I have what in Miss. If you would like it, I can get you something in writing, Ms. Carter.
Would you like us to take some action on it?
That's the question for the council is, do you want to match the $50,000 grant from the Bissell Foundation for an animal shelter with 50,000?
But this is still something that we want to do, right, as a city?
Yes.
Instead of an outside source?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking this thing that would be better for us because we don't have that kind of manpower. I do believe, I'm for an animal shelter. He has good friends that he can reach out to with deep pockets that I'm pretty sure that could help the dogs. I have a dog by choice. I have a golden doodle. Now, I do what other dogs off the street if they're vicious, but I just don't think that the city should get involved in that. I mean, I think that an outside agency, just like I said, Anchor Mission, who has a 501c3. they could be, they have bells out there, they have a spot, they can put a dog killer back there off the highway. And it possibly work. If the mayor to people in the community and say, hey, you know, what could this work? You want to put it out there as a landfill, employees will still be maintaining it. So I do think that the mayor could find a place. There's a lot of nonprofit people here that would love to take the animal control, and we just help them. You remember how we would help the Boys and Girls Club? Oh, I forgot, you failed to pay the Boys and Girls Club, but you.
Actually, y'all didn't pay me long before I got here.
We paid.
But the question is about the match. So the nonprofit issue, of course, that is exactly what the city has been trying to do since about 2008, I think. And it has, I believe, been a miserable failed attempt to deal with animal control in Phillips County, not just the city, by placing those responsibility of government entities into a unaccountable nonprofit. And what happens is, and I'm giving you my own experience. Before I was mayor, I had dogs attack my family. I called the police department. It was after hours. It was on Saturday night. I had guests over. And the police department said, you had to call this nonprofit. The nonprofit did not answer either. So what do I do about a vicious dog if the police department says they can't do it? There is no animal control. And the nonprofit decides not to do the job, or maybe they don't have the resources. It is a civic responsibility and a public safety responsibility to make sure that people do have, and they do pay taxes for this, have some recourse when there are vicious dogs, when there are biting attacks, when there are a lot of other codes that we're not enforcing, because ultimately, if the citizen chooses to ignore it long enough, or there just aren't any citizens involved, they're just wild packs of dogs. The city's responsibility is to protect public safety. And to do that, you have to do something with those animals. According to our own code, and according to that, to be humanely treated according to state law and other things. So when we say give it to nonprofit, that's exactly what we've been doing. My first meeting in the mayor's office as mayor was at my request with all the people that were stakeholders, the nonprofits, the vet and other people, to ask them, how can we fix this? So this has been something that has been a long-running thing, much longer than I've been mayor. The public expects us to solve it, and they're right to do so. Ms. Bissell is offering to help us generously with $50,000 from the foundation if we want to match it. It would be a beginning. It wouldn't be a complete solution, I don't believe, to the whole problem, but it's a beginning. I don't wag fingers about how we got here and the history. I wasn't even part of any of that, and I'm not wagging fingers at anybody now. But we do have vicious dogs. It's springtime. They're on the streets right now. They have to be taken somewhere. There's no place to take them. We haven't had a place to take them for at least 2 years at all, and before that sparingly, and we had no budget to pay for that. So my question to you is, do you want to use $50,000 to leverage that to be able to respond to the animal problems we have, which I get calls about almost daily? They expect us to do something about it. My question is, do you want to do something about it? Ms. Bristol's trying to help. And I'm very grateful.
So what you saying is $100,000 will take care of the animal shelter for how long? How long will it be? Will Ms. Bristol agree to renew this $50,000 grant yearly? Or do we get the first $50,000 and then next year we back in the same situation?
I mean, the $50,000 is to build the shelter. It's not ongoing operating or anything.
Okay, so you think you're asking us to appropriate a match of $50,000. What happens after the building of the shelter with what happens about the upkeep of the shelter? Where would that, how would that be?
And I believe that, one reason it was located at the landfill was because it's fenced in, because it has people there, who can keep an eye on it, who can help.
Nobody's there 24 hours a day, man.
No, but they're there, it's behind a fence, and it's remotely located with eyes on it. And I think there's been a reason why the city of West Helena, for many years, had it located there. This will basically be a modern version of that. And on top of that, we have positions that if you so choose that we could make animal control positions. We have, without spending, with revenue neutral, to use that term, we could operate it. And we could have I believe, a good animal control program. But the question right now is whether we want to max that 50,000 for the structure.
I understand what your question is, but
The biggest expense is the shelter itself.
I think you're trying to quick talk, but the answer, the question that has been on this table is for you to give us something showing how this animal shelter will be operated and funded, not just the building of the animal shelter. I don't like to build a box, but if I don't have any way to keep it up, I don't know how it's going to be maintained. It's just another open space. So we ask you continuously, but you always just come back with what you want us to do for you. You never give, I haven't been given the information yet of how it's gonna be, how can you keep it up? It's been said that the people who work for the landfill they can't do two jobs. They can't be responsible for the animal shelter and to be responsible for the landfill. So that's all I'm asking is, who's gonna feed the dogs? Who's gonna water the dogs? Who's gonna keep the shelter clean? Because in my mind, if you don't have all of that, we're gonna end up back in the same situation again, where somebody will be coming in and then Helena is gonna make the rules about the battered animals. So that's all I'm asking for is questions, answers. If you can give me those answers, I'm 100%.
Part of the answer is the shelter, and this is $50,000 grant. It's a gift. If we choose to match
Just
it.
keep on saying that, man, because you are evading the question. You interrupted me. You are evading the question. That is not it. There is no need to build a shelter if it cannot be operated.
But I just told you that it's my opinion that we can operate it.
Okay, we need facts.
I've been trying for 3 years. We also have a nonprofit or two right now who are taking care of most of our animals at great expense to themselves, and they can't do it forever, and they're not getting even a fraction of all of them. So we have a situation as a public health and a public safety crisis. Right now, we have a foundation willing to help us solve it. The biggest, most expensive part of that short term is the shelter itself. We have no place to take them, and we haven't for several years. And the nonprofit solution was tried and failed in this community. So we have an opportunity to leverage $50,000. I don't want to let it get away. I wish you would. It still has to be approved by the council, and all the other things that you said have to be approved by the council. But in the meantime, part of the solution, and if all I did was talk about dog feed, you'd say, what good is that if you don't have a shelter? It's a catch-22. So right now, though, somebody's willing to help us with $50,000. And I think we'd be smart to take advantage of it rather than what we know is the case, which is to do nothing. And to do nothing means we will continue to have vicious dog attacks on citizens. We will continue to have people that feel like
you
they're
build a
shaking
shelter today with the $50,000 and there's no one to operate it, there's no one to go out and pick up the dog. What you said, look at it. You got a shelter, nobody to operate.
Ms. Crockett, Ms. Crockett, I just told you, we have existing funds of appropriation, open positions that per your approval could be used for animal control. We have $25,000 funded in the budget for supplies, and the reason it has historically been at the landfill is because you have on-site staff there at least 5 days a week, and it helps provide more eyes for security reasons. There's a reason it's been there for a long time. And there's a reason why it makes most likely the most sense, because we don't have to have a great house. We don't have to build a fence. We don't have to put people there and keep eyes on it who do nothing else. So my answer to you is all of that's possible. It's chicken and egg though. And if she's willing to give us 50,000, if we'll match 50,000 to solve the most expensive short-term part of that, which is the shelter itself, without which it won't matter if we have any people doing it because there's no place to put them. And so, I mean, this is the first, last couple of years we've had 25,000, I think. That's good. I mean, we can work with that. We have positions that are funded we can work with. All of that are things that you will have to approve. But if we put this off indefinitely, even when people are trying to help us pay for it, we will never solve this problem. And our citizens, in my opinion, expect us to solve it and work together. And I'm asking you to work with me on this and others, Ms. Bissell and many others who worked hard on this issue for many, many years.
Mayor, you said a minute ago that you've been working on this for 3 years. I don't know, I guess, I mean, I've been sitting here for quite a while and I don't remember us the last 2 years working on trying to get our own animal shelter for the city. Her questions that she has are valid. They're important. I mean, but you're going around the questions just trying to get what you want. That's all right. I mean, that is important to have the building, to have it built. But what if she's asking, what are we gonna do other than just have the building? And you're not answering that. You just, there's no plan.
I'll try to answer it again. First of all, y'all had a grant before I became mayor. Somebody submitted about a 20-page plan or something. I've read it. And it was pretty comprehensive. It was pretty good. I can get y'all a copy of that in case you weren't on the council at the time. It was pretty good. But the first year when I asked for money, I had 0 proposals in animal control, 0. And we didn't have much money either, in all fairness. But I'm going to try to answer your questions directly. We have funded positions per your approval that can do animal control. We have a vehicle that can become an animal vehicle control vehicle. We need to get a cage for it. We have people already employed at the landfill who are already there and learn how to fence there. We have 25,000 in the budget for supplies and veterinary costs. We can, per your approval, answer and do exactly every one of those things.
So you're gonna take some people from the landfill to do this, operate the.
No, they're just already there. That's the reason it's always been at the landfill, because you have people located there already who can keep an eye on it. That's all.
They're gonna do landfill and animal control? Is that what you're saying?
Just like the city of West Helena has for many, many years. They will be there to keep their eye on the facility because they work right across the road from it. As far as working in and their duties, we can discuss it if you want to. But there are funded open positions in the city that we can fill for animal control. They're already funded, already in the budget. If that's what you should, if that's something you want to do.
He's saying we can discuss this if we want to, but it's not a plan. You don't have a plan, you just.
I submitted the plan. We have it in the budget. We can hire people.
We have $25,000 in the plan.
25,000 is appropriated in the budget right now.
And that's gonna take us through.
I think it can take the state. I think it can. Well, we've never tried 7 million head shelter. So we tried everything else. And somebody's trying to give us $50,000.
What else have we tried?
But all the nonprofit options that we talked about here have been. I'm sorry?
Who tried those?
The city, the community, the county, the cities, and cities and counties. All I'm trying to say is those things we talked about have been tried. Somebody, I mean, you obviously decided you don't want to do this. I'm just trying to make a point. We have personnel that can be hired.
And now you put words in people's mouths like you all obviously don't.
Well, I mean, I don't prove my support yet. Why wouldn't I?
Who's not supporting you?
So tell me what you support. What do you support?
Watch this. Have you got with the Clark Hall, the county judge? If you asking us to give 25, they got some population that's part of the city too. They got parts that are not included in cities and county. The dogs are running around too. Before you come to us with that plan, Mr. Mayor, go over to Clark Hall and see can he help match $25,000 instead of putting the citizens in the mind in the city in the debt to say, hey, we don't get see if you get some help. You run here with this same thing about what you ain't trying to do. You meet with everybody else. You need to go meet with Clark Hall and ask the court, will they work in collaboration with the city? The city don't need a dog pound. We both need something. The city shouldn't operate it. We're telling you what we will give. You talking about Captain Bishop? Okay, see if you can get some more folks because all these other places got dog pounds. They're small, little places that people stop by. We got $50, $60 more than they got. So while you study telling us about what's in the budget, you just said this day when you asked him, he said we got money for feeding the dogs and veterinary feed. So
You approved it.
I didn't say we didn't, we saying take that money. Right. You know, it won't go a long way.
For dog food?
No, it will not. That's why I'm trying to tell you, the people at Walmart was asking, let's move on from this because let's have an exception.
I'm off moving on.
Can you?
Unless somebody wants to play this.
Move on. I'm going to table this item.
But I'll just say that's exactly what we have done is gotten $50,000.
Because you won't go over to talk to other people. You want to make like the city council.
I've already spoken.
What did Clark Hall say? What did Judge
I've
Hall
already
say?
spoken with him many times.
What did he say?
I'm not gonna.
Okay.
The bottom line is they are interested or willing to talk to us about the location, but the Bissell Foundation found it to be a toxic environmental location and the $50,000 does not apply to that location. You can want all the specifics, but the bottom line is I'm offering you $50,000 now, not $25,000 from Clark Hall, but $50,000 now.
Mayor, it even goes back to what the court said earlier about the employees. How are you gonna take somebody from the landfill to do that job? I had a nephew that worked down at the nonprofit one. That's a full-time job.
I never said I was gonna take anybody from the landfill.
You didn't say that earlier? You said you're gonna have people down there that will watch them. What do you mean?
They work there. They have.
So they're gonna do dual jobs, right?
They have been doing that for years at landfill. So, okay, we simply have city employees on site, which makes it more secure.
We've tabled. Please, can we move on?
He's asked to table it. My question, I have to tell the Bissell Foundation something. So unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to tell them that we have it unable to match the $50,000 with $50,000 city money for a city animal control facility. Is there anything about that that's inaccurate? Yeah, because I have to tell them something.
That's let me say, we throw my 2 cents in this, because I've always had a philosophical difference with the way we do animal control. I've been here long enough to remember when we had a pound and people shut it down because they didn't like the way it was operated. And I've been here long enough to know that those same people are the same people who want to reopen a pound. I remember, I think just last year, if I'm not mistaken, there was some kennels purchased without council approval. And so I think that what we need is a detailed plan, not just somebody's offering some money, but what's going to happen to it after it gets here? How much is it going to cost us to maintain and operate and survive and exist? Not just what can we get today, because today is always going back to when we were consolidated. People acting for today in animal control for something else that they want has always been a bad step for us. And I'm not for taking another bad step. And so a detailed plan is all everybody's asking for. If I had a plan, for example, this is not my plan. If I were to present, I would say, well, we're going to use this much and the building is going to cost this much. And after we build it, then we'll operate it this way. We'll need this much from the budget and it'll cost this much for us to maintain it every year. And this is our projection. So that everybody understands what's going to happen. Not just if you approve it, we can get $50,000, but what happens next?
Well, as I said, this is appropriation. You still have to authorize the actual expenditure. That's when most of these, you have to bid it out. One of the questions might be, how many animals could you take care of? I couldn't answer that because it needs to be bid out. And we'd have to do the specs. You'd have to tell me what you like seeing those specs. We get bids back and they tell us how many animals and how they would do it. But that's how I mean, that's how it goes. You want specifics before we're at that stage. Right now, they're just asking if we want to match it for the facility. We don't actually have to authorize the expenditure later. The question is, do you want to appropriate the 50,000 and take advantage of that while we have a chance? We're not going to spend the money yet because we haven't authorized it yet. So yeah, all of those questions are good questions. It's just not the question before the council, which is whether to appropriate and match the 50,000 and leverage that for a shelter. And I don't belabor, I feel like I have already, but I'll take Mr. Crockett. Ms. Crockett. I don't believe I said, if I said, I don't believe I said that. If I'd said Miss, I apologize. Ms. Crockett, you recognize, and then we'll try to wrap this up. We don't need to table it.
I just want to ask this question. You saying that they're willing to give the $50,000. There are no stipulations. They give the $50,000. It ain't that this animal shelter has to be built in such and such time. Or there are no stipulations. So what you're saying is we can get the $50,000. Wait a minute, let me finish my question. Let me finish my question.
It's a cash match.
Let me finish my question.
Okay.
My question is, if they give us $50,000, can we leave it sitting up there for 10 years before we use it? Or is there a time specific on it that we have to use it in a certain time? Because you're saying that we can get the money, we don't have to do this right now. But I know I'm not going to give you $50,000 saying that you're going to do something with it and it sit there no 6 or 7 years. So what are the requirements of getting the $50,000 besides the $50,000 match?
That's the only requirement they have set out, is that it be $50,000 cash match and be used for a shelter that, is approved for animal shelter standards according to the state of Arkansas and so forth. But all of that would have to be in the specs for the actual shelter. This would just be an appropriations. We wouldn't actually even receive the $50,000 grant, I don't believe, until you actually authorize the expenditure. So that, all those other answers would be up to the people giving the money, to the Bissell Foundation itself. So having said that, okay, I promise we'd move on. Mr. Franklin moved that we table it. Ms. Davis, I believe, seconded the motion to table it. Any other questions, comments about that motion? If not, call the roll.
Can you get a plan of action together? What Mr. Anthony described to you, what Ms. Crockett and Ms. Davis described to you. So when you come back to the next meeting, you can say how much it would cost to build a building, how much the employees would cost, what are you gonna have cameras up, build a structure, like building a house. $50,000 will give us a house. $100,000 will give us a house these days. But see if you can come up with a plan, talk to the county judge and see if he's willing to help fund something. We're for animal shelter, but the city should not run it. We have had, you said yourself, we have had failed attempts. Mr. Anthony has said the same thing. So why don't you, as the mayor, sit down with the county judge and see what can the county, can me and you set up a meeting with the court? It'd be nice if me go to the court and ask to see, could they match us $25,000. So if they get 25, we can get 25. That's $50,000 to match the grant. Then after you get the $100,000, Mr. Mayor, where are you gonna put the building? So come up with those things.
Just seen a handout.
So we ain't going to the landfill.
Any other questions or comments about the motion on the table?
Are you going to?
If not, call roll.
You gonna do that, Mr. Mayor? Talk about, come on, please.
Thanks for all those questions.
Anthony? Ford?
Yes.
Davis? Crockett?
Yeah.
Franklin?
Yes.
5 yes, 1 absent.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I'll try to do this quickly so we can maybe beat back some time. The legislative officers notified me that, and this is the issue we've discussed before. I don't have to belabor it here. I'm just making you aware of it. So the lady I did make you aware of it. I'm making you aware of it now. We can discuss it later. The audits for 2021 and also some of the issues in 2022 have been authorized but not appropriated as they should have been. And so they are recommending that I propose and that Mr. Turner propose a amended budget that adequately appropriates the monies in 2021 and anything we have not adequately appropriated for 22. Should we not do that, we will receive a finding for not adequately appropriating. And we've had this discussion before. An authorization is not an appropriation. Appropriation is not an authorization. They're two separate things. You can probably, I mean, I'll leave it up to Mr. Valley or someone else to tell me if you can do that in one motion. But there are two separate things legally. You have to appropriate it and you have to authorize it. And the auditors have notified me that the city council will have to amend the budget to adequately appropriate many of the items that were not adequately appropriated in fiscal 21 and fiscal 22. This is something, as you know, I've said many times. Many times it's been said we can appropriate. An authorization is an appropriation. I asked that specific question and you're more than welcome to do the same. They reported to me that it is not the same. I'll leave it up to Mr. Valley or anybody else for that matter to follow up with legislative audit, but they asked me and suggested I bring this up to the council, and I have done that. And in the meantime, we can discuss this more later. I'll leave that up to y'all.
Do you have the things that they're recommending that we appropriate, I mean, to go back and do? I don't think that it would be proper to just do a blanket.
No, I'm not asking you to do anything tonight or do.
I'm just saying, well, we need that information before we can even discuss it.
No, sir, I've said many times we have to appropriate and not just authorize. And, but at any rate, I've done my duty, which is to notify you of it.
Okay, can you do your duty as to getting us what you're trying to get us to? Thank you, Mr. Turner.
I will get Ms. Turner, we'll get you the items that I mentioned that were not adequately appropriated. All right, any other questions about that? So we're going to move on to the veto resolution 4. I'm not going to belabor this either. The main issue, there were two issues, but the main issue was the how we're going to spend water and sewer money on the Rescue Act on water and sewer. And I'm not, again, not wagging fingers at anybody. I really wouldn't know who to wag fingers at, even if I wanted to. But I did not see the, I didn't have adequate time at the last meeting to read the actual settlement. And I was trying to, but I couldn't really find any language in the settlement itself about it. I presume, sorry, I'm running the meeting and it's hard for me to read and run the meeting at the same time. And I never did get to really read it, and I did not get to talk to the attorney with the municipal league. He's advising me on it before the vote, but I did not want to hold up the vote. There was an urgency in the room about approving the Rescue Act money for $1,000 for city employees and $5,000 for elected officials. That part and the attorney fees. It was the part on water and sewer. I amended the resolution. I thought that's all I needed to do because it was referring to the resolution. It's not in the resolution. The attorney advised me the next day when we were going over it. The only legal action I could take at that point was to veto it so that we could clarify the resolution. We do not have to revisit the settlement. If we can, and I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just asking you to specify, and I think I proposed language in the veto letter. Based on what my conversations with the attorney would honor the agreement, the verbal agreement that the parties had when we went into the settlement process. And that was really twofold. One, and it was actually my suggestion that we reach this agreement, that we do spend it that way, provided, not that it was not spent on bonuses, which is what got put in there, but that it gets spent on water and sewer, which is specifically those items that were not funded in the 2021 Rescue Act monies that went to the employees. And instead, and that we instead go back and fund those items. And he asked for a list of those things. I sent it to him. He never saw it. He had some personal issues come up in his life, in his world of death in the family and so forth. So like I said, I'm not wagging fingers at anybody, but after talking to the attorney, the best thing he recommended was to veto it and suggest that language. I've already signed all the employees' checks. I believe Mr. Turner has some as well. The settlement itself, the lawsuit itself mentioned that we were required to pay that under federal law. And so in my opinion, we could have gone ahead and paid it, or at least I'm agreeing to that in the settlement. And I have no reason not to go ahead and release those checks, and we could have done it last week. I didn't want to hold those checks up to read the settlement and go over that during the council meeting or the next day. So I went ahead and signed those checks, but they are still sitting here at City Hall and pending your action tonight. So that's all I'm going to say. Mr. Valley or anybody, if you don't want to belabor it, you can also just make a motion to do what you already feel like you want to do.
This is just an act of time for this meeting on the line. We cannot make it call in. Mr. Eichmann? Yes. Hey, Andre.
Hey, how you doing? I have you on speakerphone.
Can you hear me, everyone? Yeah, it was cutting in and out, so I didn't hear everything that was said.
Okay. Can you all hear him okay? We have the floor, Ms. Eichmann.
Okay, well, good evening again, council. And I could hear the mayor speaking, and I'm not all sure what was said because it was breaking in and out just a little bit. I don't want to repeat things that have been said, but and Andre, if I'm incorrect on anything, let me know. So I'm not sure what may have taken place over the last day or two, but I was copied on the mayor's veto of the resolution. I believe he was explaining the purpose behind the veto of the resolution to approve the settlement agreement. I did talk to the mayor about on the day of the veto. He called me to talk about it. So I'm aware of what his thinking is. If I understand the mayor's position was not disagreeing with the terms of the settlement agreement, but wanting to have some assurance with regard to the appropriations for water and sewer, and I guess wanting to make sure that to see if council and mayor could be on the same page with regard to those appropriations. The veto is a part of the legislative process. It gets done within 5 days, or it must be done within 5 days of the order or the resolution of the ordinance that is at issue, excepting Sundays, of course. And another part of that is the override. I'm sure Andre has spoken to you about what transpires with an override, but essentially what you have as a choice before you is to work out the issue with the appropriations with the mayor, or to override the veto. And so I think obviously that's what we're here to do. So my expectation would be, obviously, is that if you all were able to work out the appropriations, then hopefully that would be taken care of tonight, and we could have the settlement agreement signed and the checks processed as the agreement requires. If it's vetoed, I would hope the same thing, that we could go ahead excuse me, if the veto is overridden, I would hope the same thing, that we could go ahead and process the settlement agreement and the checks, either way, to resolve the case. I think it's a good settlement for the city, and so I have been behind it and urging that it happens. So, if there are any questions for me, I'm happy to address them as I can. Andre or Mayor, were there any particular
Yes,
you wanted me to address?
Mr. Eichmann, you and I talked 4 or 5 times last week, correct?
Yes.
And we were in agreement that once the veto was issued, that the checks would not to be dispersed because of the veto. Is that correct?
We talked about that, correct?
Okay.
I just want to clarify that the verbal meeting, the verbal agreement that we had before everything was put in writing, Ms. Ramsey, Mr. Valley, you were there, I was there, was how I presented it. And again, not anybody's fault, but by the time I had read the settlement, which was, I got it right before the meeting, or tried to read the settlement, I couldn't read the entire settlement, and I didn't have a chance to talk to you. Is that correct? To review it. I just want to make sure that the actual agreement is what we agreed to verbally. And I felt like you never got my email. Again, I sent it, but I must have sent the wrong place, or I'm not sure what happened. But you remember asking me for language on that. And yeah.
Yes.
So this language is pretty much what that is. And I thought I didn't want to hold up the process 2 weeks ago because there was an urgency in the room about approving it. I didn't necessarily see anything. I didn't have time. It's like I said, when you're running a meeting, you don't have time to read everything. I assumed that it was in there, but the only thing that was in there was that it would not be spent on bonuses, and that really was not the point of the compromise. The point was that the money would be spent on water, sewer, and needed infrastructure issues, similar to what had originally been appropriated in 2021. So I just want to say, while we got you on the phone, you were there in that verbal agreement. You agree with that because not everybody was in that meeting, and I just want to make sure you remember it the way I did. Yes.
Mr. Eichmann, before you answer, we're talking about 2 different things. The resolution that I immediately emailed you added a paragraph 6 that says 1.1 million will be spent in the water department. The mayor's veto said something in addition, which says that the money that was previously taken out would be added in. I don't think that was a part of discussion me, you, Ms. Ramsey, and the mayor had. In fact, last council meeting, you were not here, and I advised the council that they need to come up with a plan about spending the money. And I wouldn't have said that at the last meeting, but you were not here, if I was privy to those discussions. Now, admittedly, I'm not privy to any further discussions that you and the mayor had on that issue. But I was trying to clear up what was discussed with me, Ms. Ramsey, you and the mayor, and it was about the 1.1 million. There was nothing in that conversation about this reappropriating funds from the city council repealing all the other issues. But go ahead. He's asking you a question. Yes.
Well, I just want to look on the other thing. I asked if you recall this. And Ms. Ramsey was part of this meeting also, that we discussed, since the $5,000 for elected officials will actually come out of operating funds, but we timed the release of those $5,000 in a way that would not restrict the fund from a cash flow, which is, we have a bigger issue with cash flow than anything in our operating fund, since we cannot pay the $5,000 for elected officials out of the pandemic money or out of the Rescue Act money. Then we would have to pay that under our operating accounts, and we cannot commingle. I know you agree with that, right? I think everybody understands that, right? I'm asking a question. Can you hear me?
Mayor, were you asking that question to me?
Yeah, I'm just asking. You agree? I think we agreed on that.
So we talked about the timing of the expenditures, and you had expressed concern about the payment and whether there was money, the funds were there to be able to make those kind of in a lump sum or one-time payment.
Basically, the agreement was that we would make those payments in a way that would not restrict our cash flow and operating account. And that we would, and what I actually said, since I'm the one that suggested the compromise, I think I can't remember what it was that we would spend the money on the 2022, rest of that money on the same items that we repealed in 2021 on water and sewer primarily. And you asked for me to email you a list of those things and language specifically. Do you remember that?
Well, I never received an email.
No, but you remember asking me for that email, right?
Yes. Yes,
And that's what
we were talking about appropriate, how to handle the matter. And as I recall, the discussion was about getting an agreement that the funds would be spent, the Recovery Act funds would be directed towards water and sewer. I recall asking about that and being told that, or maybe I don't necessarily recall what I was told, but I recall asking about whether there were specifics as to how those funds were going to be spent. I mean, I think we talked about several different options. Even to the extent of having a budget amendment or some type of other proposal that would have been before y'all.
And the other two items was the $10,000 for attorney fees and $1,000 out of the Rescue Act fund for non-elected city employees, that was part of the agreement. I just want to confirm what the actual verbal agreement was. And that we didn't have a chance to talk, and I didn't have a chance to read the settlement before we approved it the other night. And that's all this is about.
If I recall too, regarding the timing of the funds being paid, there was going to be a discussion with Treasurer about that question with Recovery Act funds for the additional $1,000 and also the appropriation out of the.
And I did subsequently confirm that we had the money in the Rescue Act funds and the current funds for the $1,000.
The way that it happened. Prepared a draft of the settlement agreement. I sent it to opposing counsel for review. When I heard back from him saying there was no objection, I provided it over to the city for review and comment. So that was the process that it went through. Obviously, had I received a list of particulars on labeled out expenditures or appropriations that were desired, I would have worked to have incorporated that in. And quite frankly, when it came up for city council consideration, I thought that there was no objections to the settlement agreement at that time. So, it's really a situation at this point is whether there is an agreement in the room. I guess there seemed to be at the last meeting, at least with regard to the expenditures from the next tranche of funds from the Recovery Act going to water and sewer. And so is there further agreement on how those would be spent or not? And if it seems to me that that's what we're here to see, is that if there is that consensus, then perhaps you all can move forward on it. If there's not, the council can take other action.
I have a question. This is Don Lethbridge.
Yes.
Are we talking about two different documents? Are we talking about the resolution? Is there a separate settlement agreement?
Yes, they're attached to the resolution as Exhibit A. is a settlement agreement.
I don't remember the attachment. Did you sign the settlement agreement?
Are you asking if I signed the settlement agreement?
Yes, sir.
I drafted the settlement agreement. I believe I sent when I thought it had been agreed upon, I sent it over with my signature to the city. I don't believe the mayor has signed it.
Did you provide that signed agreement to opposing counsel?
Yes. Oh, did I provide it with my signature on it to opposing counsel?
Yes, sir.
I don't think so. It's been several weeks. I have to go back and look, but I believe I sent it with my signature over to the city, and my signature was basically that I approved the form. The settlement agreement has not been entered yet. It had a place for the mayor's signature in several parts, and it has not been executed. And the resolution, the effect of the resolution being vetoed is that the resolution approving it's not in effect. So if you didn't override the veto, that resolution would be in effect. But as of right now, it's my understanding that the resolution is not in effect.
Any other questions for Mr. Hyde? Thank you, Mr. Hydeman. Thank you. We do have a question. Thank you, Mr. Hydeman. Appreciate you, and we're trying to cite Andre's phone here, which is down, please. All right, thank you, Ms. Ackman.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? I think that pretty much clarified it to me. It did.
As I understand it, I think you're saying there was some stuff in the resolution.
Well, actually, it was the absence of anything in the resolution that we had agreed to put in the resolution. But not the resolution, it's the two different items. The settlement agreement. There are some things in the settlement agreement not in there that are absent regarding water and sewer. All I really said was, as long as you don't spend it on bonuses. Well, it's not so much the issue of spending on bonuses as it is the issue that we need to spend it desperately on water and sewer infrastructure and other infrastructure, but particularly water and sewer. And it wasn't in there. Having said that, I don't believe we have to the resolution was referring to the settlement. And so I presumed that it was in the settlement, but it wasn't. And I didn't know that until the next day. Putting this in the resolution fixes that. So just really that simple, without having to do the settlement, without having to redo anything really.
Those agreements are things that you wanted from the council, right?
It's in the letter, just that language in the letter that refers to the. I have to go back and look at it. The city council does hereby with this resolution appropriate and approve expenditures previously and initially approved by the city council for the American Rescue Act of fiscal year 2021. And agrees that these same expenditures shall be appropriated and authorized upon receipt of the fiscal 22 American Rescue Act funds. That and just giving us the authority to go ahead and see, but pending receive the actual funds.
It's all strange to me, and here's why.
That's all it is. It's just, Mr. Valley, Ms. Ramsey, do you disagree with the verbal agreement at all?
The verbal agreement, I disagree with the part about the funds being reappropriated from last year. They did say in the resolution, I did put the language in about the 1.1 million being spent in the water and sewer only. In this conversation that I was part of, that Ms. Ramsey was part of, there was no discussion about the excavator and all the other things that were repealed being added to the agreement. And that's why last city council meeting, I said if you all need a plan relating to it, because when we left, it was my understanding that we were leaving, that the 1.1 million would be spent water and sewer only was your offer, and that we were deferring to Mr. Turner to determine whether it could be in 5 months payment, $1,000 a month to the elected officials, or whether the money would be paid in lump sum. Ms. Ramsey deferred to Mr. Turner, and I deferred to both of them, and I believe you deferred to both of them as well. That was my understanding. Now, you've had many conversations with Mr. Eichmann outside of my presence as Ms. League lawyer. So I think that you all may be commingling, well, you may be commingling those conversations with the meeting that me, you, and Ms. Ramsey and Mr. Eichmann had.
Well, and like I said, it's not anybody right finger on here. It's just that what I would say is that without getting into fiscal 2021 or the repeals, it's just a question of appropriating the money in 22 for water and sewer out of the American Rescue Act money for 22. It's as simple as that, really. Because the actual expenditures still have to go through the expenditure process for the city council, but it would actually appropriate the fiscal 22 American Rescue Act funds for water and sewer and commit the city council to doing that in fiscal 2022.
I made the resolution to say that. I added paragraph 6 that said that to the resolution that was, and I emailed it to everybody the day after.
But it wasn't clarified in the settlement itself, and I thought it was. So I just think it needs to be fleshed out. Let me ask you this question: the approval of the resolution with that language, does that constitute an appropriation of the fiscal year 22 Rescue Act money for water and sewer? That's really my main question, and I did not get an adequate answer from our attorney in time, and the only action available at that point was to veto it without explanation. So my question really would be, did that resolution appropriate that money in that way?
The resolution itself said clearly that they would set aside the 1.1 million. Just gave a general authorization for 1.1 million, and that they would come back and determine all the expenditures.
Well, if you just make a motion to appropriate the let's just say the American Rescue Act money that we receive in fiscal year 22 for water and sewer, then I'm happy. It's really that simple. I'm not sure the resolution adequately did it, and I thought the settlement did, but it didn't refer to it.
Here's the issue, I guess, and I didn't address this before, and I just thought this would be over and done with, but the discussion that we're having is about what we do at this table, right? It's about council and what you want and what the council wants. The lawsuit is some those versus the city of Helena-West. We are the city of Helena-West. If this was a mediation, the negotiation is between the people opposite each other, the adversaries. It's not between us. I mean, we're trying to settle a case and we're not the people who sued each other. It makes no sense. Our negotiation has to be with the people who sued us. Either they accept what's being offered to them or not. I don't even understand how this, but people, we are all the city of Helena-West. He's not your lawyer, he's our lawyer. He represents our laws. So I can't understand why we've even engaged in these conversations about what we agree to versus what you want when we're not in the lawsuit as adversaries. We're all sued. If we don't get the case resolved, we're gonna pay the extra money. So our responsibility at this point, once we get sued, is to take the best financial out for the city. As it relates to the lawsuit, all this other stuff that's being dragged into the lawsuit is a distraction because it's not a part of the suit. How we appropriate money and all that kind of stuff, the people who sued us don't care about that stuff. They care about the issue at hand, the one that's going to court. If we were in court, we wouldn't be sitting up here talking about what we do on our next year's budget. It would be about the issue presented in the lawsuit, whether or not they were entitled to what was appropriate. That's it. That's sole action.
So if you would, Mr. Elliott, I think Mr. Hyman's was to take the conversation I was referring to back to opposing counsel and ask them if they could work with that, that's a working compromise, basically. Am I missing something there, Mr. Valley?
You're talking about two different things. The issue, yes, the settlement is with the opposing parties that sued the city. The municipal league, beyond Mr. Eichner, Mr. General Counsel for Municipal League, John Wilkerson, he wanted the case resolved in a matter where the mayor would not veto it. And so the issue that was presented was, let's come up with language. And we talked to Mr. Eichmann about the language, about trying to come up with language to where at the end of the day, we wanted to go back through this. Because if y'all remember, Mr. Wilkerson came down from Little Rock and talked to city council when it was initially done. We had Karen Curry involved. It's been a long, arduous process. And it's only, we're the only city that's gone through this long process. And it was trying to get to a point where we're paying attorney fees to Municipal League and they're paying fees to Mr. Eichner. And so financially, they wanted it resolved. So as part of it, they were trying to address the mayor's concerns relating to the next tranche of money that was coming. And that's how this conversation began about the water department. And that was the genesis of it. And then the mayor, Mr. Eichmann, he was on the phone last time, 2 meetings ago. We made those discussions. Then 2 days later, he, Ms. Ramsey, and I, Mr. Eichmann, had a conference call in the mayor's office. And that's how all this began. And that's just the background of it. And I understand we're commingling two things with that. I understand that. But the issue with the Municipal League is they wanted both sides to resolve the issue. When I say both sides, the mayor and the council, even though represent everyone.
Just say this, Ms. Valley, if it's your legal opinion, and there's no disagreement, that the resolution that we passed is sufficient to be considered appropriation authorization at the 1.1 or the whatever money we receive in 22 is spent on water and sewer, then I'm happy with that. But if you can't say that it's adequate, that if you cannot say that, I'm just saying, if you can say for the record that is committing the council and the city of Helena-West Helena to appropriate the 22 money for water and sewer, and I'm happy with that. My understanding was it didn't do that, but if you think it is, that's good enough for me.
I thought that's what it said, did it not?
Yes, that is what it said. The council, I specifically advised the council that you would have to come back and further appropriate, but you were setting aside $1.1 million to be used exclusively in the water department.
Right, so what's the difference other than what you have on here about your compromise? What's the difference?
Because you didn't, when you just told me we didn't authorize, we didn't appropriate it then.
That's the first thing we did.
Well, I heard you say both things. We set it aside, but we did for future appropriations, what I thought I heard you just say. So if we just want to appropriate the money, we still have to approve the expenditures. And it's kind of more of a technical point, which is the point of the veto letter.
The council agreed that it would appropriate the 1.1 million specifically for the water department. Now, the individual expenditures, it was not an individual expenditures as to break out, okay, we're gonna spend on this project, this project, this project, this project, this project.
But it's your contention that it does serve as an appropriation, the resolution as passed? Yes or no? I mean, that's really.
For the water department? You all agree that the appropriation would appropriate the money?
Not the actual expenditures, for appropriations.
I didn't hear your question.
Not the actual expenditures individually, but the appropriations of the 22 Marine Rescue Act. It's your opinion legally that resolution that we did approve is an appropriation of that money for fiscal 22. That's really my only contention. Is that Mr. Franklin, I can speak for myself. You're not recognized. I'm asking our city attorney his opinion. If you consider that resolution as passed to be an appropriation, then I can be happy with that. But I was advised that it was not an appropriation.
Appropriation for, are you saying what you have in here, which is 2021 appropriations about the stuff that was repealed?
I'm just saying, all I'm saying is I would be happy if Mr. Valley is telling us that the resolution as already approved, without that language, is actually an appropriation, then I'm okay with that.
But the resolution,
That's all I'm
I
saying.
would go back and look at the
I can live
language,
with
but the resolution, I believe they said they agreed to be bound to exclusively use the money for the water and sewer department.
So I don't
I don't
understand
think-
what's different.
I don't know the difference either, that's why I'm
But
asking.
yet you do know the difference because you have it on here
Well,
about
I
you
had,
suggesting.
I mean, I saw, I didn't know, and
When you all talked
I'm trying
about
to
it,
answer the question, I did not know the answer.
when you all talked about it,
I needed to talk to the attorney, to ask him that question. And the answers I got was that we did not do those things, and the only option I had was to veto it so that we could. Now, if Mr. Valley contends that we don't, then I can live with that, that's all I'm saying. As long as he believes and he's willing to say legally that that's an appropriation, then I'm okay with that.
I'm really not.
That's all I'm
understanding.
saying.
I'm not. If this is 2022 Rescue Act funds, that's gonna be used specifically for water and sewer, why is this other stuff in here?
that's
Because that's
veto.
what actually we discussed, and then discussed that in that verbal agreement. All I'm telling you tonight is, my concern is the appropriations for fiscal 22 is approved. If it's approved, or you want to approve it tonight to clarify, I am happy. As
Okay,
far
what are the
as my
appropriations for
concerns I have
2022?
in that letter, I'm okay.
What are the appropriations for 2022? Is that what you're saying? Are you talking about 2021? What are you talking about?
What that does is actually honor what I thought was the verbal agreement, which mentioned 21. But all I'm telling you tonight is your resolution that we passed, if it is the legal opinion of our city attorney, that constitutes the appropriation for 22. That's what I care about. Are we appropriating money per our agreement in the settlement in fiscal 22 for water and sewer out of the American Rescue Act? That's it. It's really that simple. And maybe I made it more complicated than it needed to be. I was trying to reiterate what we talked about at the meeting, but that would make me feel that, so I would, and even if the
And you,
resolution as passed does the same, it is an appropriation, then I
but
can
you're
live with
sitting there,
that.
you're saying two different things. You have written one thing on this paper, but you're saying something totally different.
I'm telling you, I would accept that. That'd be my preference, but I would accept just an acknowledgement legally, our legal opinion that the resolution we passed does constitute appropriation for fiscal 21 or 22, I'm sorry, for American Rescue Act.
I believe that the language that's in the resolution, and I'm not looking at it now, that's why I was trying to ask Ms. Turner, did he have a copy? I believe that the resolution with paragraph 6 in it, it said they agreed that they will appropriate. This is language I think that was in there. I think this language that we read, that they agreed that they would appropriate $1.1 million for when it comes.
You couldn't just make an appropriation now and make it move on. You know, to-
Is that number 6?
I just think this is just.
Yeah.
You don't
It
have
doesn't
to
say it's appropriation, but it says specifically, it says, and the city council agreed that it will appropriate said funds to be used exclusively for the Helena-West on the water department, and no bonus of any kind will be paid out of these funds. So it's not an appropriation at this moment. They said that they would appropriate 1.1 million. That's just.
So the misunderstanding, I guess, really comes from, I thought it was in the settlement and it wasn't. And the only option left was to veto it so we could add it. And the main thing I would like to see is that it is appropriated. That's it.
But all you had to do was ask him, why did you have to repeal it? If it's the same.
Because I was
word.
taking advice from legal counsel in this week, who was our advisor legally on it. Well, I'm just telling you the truth. He was the representative, he's the lawyer representing the city. You
And
just-
he's
you just
the,
talked about it.
he's the lawyer that's representing this city.
And I just told you, it's a compromise to say that we can
So
appropriate.
you can get what you want. That's what you, this,
Well, again, it's with the amateur issue. It is what we want.
no, this is not, this is your compromise. It doesn't say us. This is yours.
I think the city, I think we would like to see the money spent. That's what the resolution said, is that we will do it. So just appropriate it and we're okay.
I'm not okay on appropriations that were repealed. I'm not okay on that.
No, ma'am, I'm not asking you to do that.
Well, then why do you have that in here?
Okay. What resolution number is this?
So what difference will make? This is the mayor.
So for clarity, the mayor and I just had a sidebar. For clarity, the resolution does not appropriate, you say you will appropriate. And the mayor just asking, what he just leaned to me and asked was, can't they simply just do a motion for 2022 to appropriate $1.1 million to be used exclusively for water and sewer? And my answer to that was yes, is what I just said to him. Yes, the city council has that option. If you've already agreed to do it at some point anyway.
But here's the problem, and I wasn't in those negotiations, but the problem is people trying to pacify other people and mixing things that should have never been mixed. The negotiation should have been about how to resolve the case. Now, sure, the people who are on the other side agree to it because they want to get it resolved. Right? They don't care what we do at this table. They just want to get it resolved. But mixing all that stuff, hey, because it's not even enforceable. I mean, if we decide tomorrow we don't want to do it, what happens? You can't, we're on the same side. We can't be sued for it. We all are the same entity. We're all the city. So it was a useless, worthless negotiation. And it just confused this entire process. That's something that should have taken place at this table amongst the people at the table, away from the litigation. That's what I'm saying. But that being said, I thought I understood the facts to be what they were. I drafted a resolution before I came. I handed a copy to everybody because I just thought it was important to state what the pertinent facts are to the litigation, not about this other stuff. And I'll read it into the record. I don't know what the resolution number will be, but it will be 5 of 2022. Being resolved by the city of Helena-West, state of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled, a resolution of the city council of Helena-West, Arkansas, overriding the mayor's veto of resolution 04-2022. Whereas the city of Helena-West, Arkansas, bound through the city council, has previously agreed to settle litigation in the case of Doe's versus city of Helena-West, Arkansas. Whereas the litigation in the case of Doe's versus city of Helena-West, Arkansas was born out of a city council vote to make payments to city employees and officials from pandemic relief funds, and whereas the city of Helena-West City Council voted to make the aforementioned payments, and there was no veto of that measure, and whereas the mayor of the city of Helena-West declined to veto the vote of the city council, but refused to make the previously approved payments, leading to a lawsuit being filed by the plaintiffs in the case of Doe's versus city of Helena-West, Arkansas, thereby creating exposure to the city of Helena-West for damages as well as unnecessary attorney's fees. Whereas the city council of the city of Helena-West found it necessary to resolve the litigation based upon advice of counsel and financial prudence, and whereas the mayor of the city of Helena-West has now vetoed a resolution settling and resolving the litigation in the case of Doe's versus city of Helena-West, Arkansas, thereby creating further exposure to the city of Helena-West for additional damages as well as additional attorney's fees. Whereas the city council of the city of Helena-West finds it necessary to override the mayor's veto of resolution 04-2022 to prevent further costs to the city, since the parties to the litigation have dismissed their cause in reliance upon the city's actions. And now therefore be it resolved that the city council for the city of Helena-West hereby overrides the mayor's veto of resolution 04-2022 so as to prevent further waste of city funds in a settled and dismissed legal matter. This resolution passed and adopted in regular session April 19, 2022. And the reason why I stated that the way I did is because it purely addresses the legal issue. That's it. There was a measure passed, there was no veto, that created the litigation. It did. It created the legal cause of action because it was unpaid wages. They sued the city. That's the discussion I had with Mr. Wilkerson. I asked him a pointed question when he was here. That created the litigation. That created the need for the municipal league to say, we need to get this resolved. I hate they drug all the rest of the stuff into it because that shouldn't have been in the case. The reason why we needed to settle the case is because they had a viable cause of action. That's it. The other stuff just is confusion, is all it is. We're talking about what we spend in the water department. I mean, that's got nothing to do with the case. That's not what we got sued about. And so that's the resolution. It would be number 5 of 2022. And I would move to adopt resolution 5/2022 overriding.
Mr. Everly, moves adoption of resolution number 5, do you say?
5 of 2022.
22. To override veto Is there a second? Ms. Davis seconds the motion. Questions or comments about the motion? The only comment I would make is that I would, it sounds like this was already ready before we even had a meeting. And as I said about 45 minutes ago, we could dispute about this if we already.
I typed it at 5 o'clock. At 5, it took me 19 minutes.
I said before the meeting started.
Yeah, that's right.
My only point
5 to
is,
5:19.
all I'm asking you to do is to do what the understanding was when we passed the resolution, which is to appropriate the money for the American Rescue Act for the Water and Sewer Department. That's all. And it's very simple. It's a verbal commitment. I'm disappointed that we're not making that tonight. Having said that, if there are no other questions or comments, call the roll.
I have a comment, and that is, we can agree to whatever. It just doesn't need to be included in the lawsuit. And I'm not opposed to,
Mr. Everett, you're taking the opposing counsel's side as if it were, we could have taken it to court and won that case.
Why?
So
Why?
because they never did, that's why you said
Why?
that. So you won't go-
Tell me what the
Why?
cause of action was and what defense we had.
No,
that
sir,
would
I'm not-
have prevailed.
I'm telling you that the reason you settle most of the time is so we don't go to court. We did not go to court. I'm not here to argue in a courtroom before a judge the merits of the case. All I'm trying to tell you is that the settlement agreement included the appropriation of funds in 22 for Rescue Act funds for water and sewer, and it was not reflected in the resolution and the settlement agreement that we approved 2 weeks ago. That's it.
I understand, but
It is very simple, and there's no reason to make it complicated. And it has been made complicated because for whatever reason, it doesn't need to be. But your motion and second is on the floor.
I understand, but do you understand that that agreement by the people at this table is not binding on anybody at this table?
And do you agree that the veto is the legal action?
It absolutely is a
Legal action.
It absolutely is.
And all of that has a bearing on the settlement.
Absolutely.
That's all this is.
I
And all
understand.
I asked you to do is appropriate the money the way you said you would in that resolution, and tonight you didn't, you weren't willing to do that. And that's disappointing, but that might or might not be germane to your actual resolution, which is to overturn the veto.
No, sir, we passed a resolution for 2022, which stated the council's intent and action.
But that is not, that's intent, that's not action, that's intent to act.
That's what.
And that's
what
the distinction which the municipal legal lawyer made. And also Mr. Valley has now collaborated. And I haven't heard any disagreement with that. I would love to hear a disagreement with that, make my life a lot easier. But I'm understanding that's non-appropriation. All I'm asking you to do is appropriate. But that's not what's on the table, your resolution is. So,
As it relates to override the veto, it takes 2/3 majority. That's 4 of you. And Ms. Crockett is part of the lawsuit, so she should abstain. I can't tell her that she has to, but just stating that for the record before we go forward.
thank you, Scott. Call the roll.
Yes.
Franklin,
Yeah.
Crockett, Etherly,
Yes.
Ford. One absent, one abstention, 4 yes.
Okay, so the veto is over. Let's make sure the $1,000 employee checks go out first thing. We've been sitting down here for a week. All right, thank you. Anybody else that had to listen to all that? So let's see what time it is. It's after 8 o'clock. You will get public attendance thing.
I think you all need to address the public attendance issue. The public attendance issue is real simple. You all are charged with real property. Since the pandemic, the public has not been at city council meeting. Question that the mayor has been trying to address with the body is, well, what parameters do you all want to set, and how do you all want to do this to inviting the public back to the council meetings, et cetera?
If that's an issue, I feel if they have an issue.
Ma'am?
Because they can still do virtual.
They should do virtual, but the question would be, the public has a right to be at meetings. Even if it's on a limited capacity, they still have a right to be at meetings. And currently, they're only at meetings in Zoom, and they hear, if there is a radio rebroadcast, they would hear that, but they're not hearing the meeting. Now, your policy has been that people cannot speak from the audience, they can only be added to the agenda at their request, and so they still wouldn't be allowed to speak. But the issue is, if you're allowing people in the room, how many people you allow in the room, and et cetera.
I'm allowed, but to capacity, however, whatever the fire department says, that's capacity for this room. I wouldn't want to see people all around the wall, like, crowded like it has been before, but. Yeah.
The question is, in this room here, we still have some COVID issues.
Right.
I don't know if you all want them to sit 6 feet apart or alternate every third chair, however you all want to do that.
I would say so, yes.
You all need something like that in place. I would invite any comment, but I think the public probably needs to be allowed to be here.
Right. I think we should adhere to those.
My only question is a legal question. And the legislature recently, a year ago, I don't know how recent it was, but they approved several measures that did away with those stipulations. I honestly haven't kept up with all of them. So my question to you is, are there anything specifically, since we're a public body, that we have to adhere to that was addressed in those actions of the legislature and the governor or not? I just want to make sure we're in compliance, in other words, with what the state law is now on that.
I'll have to double check
That's
the candidate on that, because things are moving so fast, like the federal mask mandate was struck down yesterday in Florida. Some courthouses still require masks. I think that many times, I think the city council still can require masks to be here, because COVID is not over.
I'm willing to open it up to the public, provided we adhere to whatever the city attorney's report is on our legal stipulations. So that we're in compliance with the law. As long as we're in compliance with the law on public meetings, and the city attorney advises us accordingly, then I'm in favor of returning to public meetings.
But what I'll do, I'll check with Mr. Wilkerson tomorrow and get guidance as to what he's recommended every city do. And if the council agrees to that, then we can just follow Mr. League instructions as to how to conduct the meetings in the future, but open them with whatever access that the Mr. League approved. Would that be a minimum to the body? Can we do that by acclamation? Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. It's 8:15. We still have a lengthy agenda. What's the pleasure? Ms. Davis, no, makes a motion that we table the items on the agenda until the next available meeting. Is that your motion, Ms. Davis? Ms. Davis, is that your motion?
It is.
Is there a second to Ms. Davis's motion? Mr. Franklin seconds the motion. Any questions, comments about the motion?
I have just one
Mr.
statement.
Valley?
The only statement I have, I think you all have reached a level of critical mass where things are being kicked down the road, and I think that the body probably needs to start meeting extra meetings a month, at least one extra meeting a month, so that we can get things done. And that meeting could be strictly financial meetings, so that we can get other things done, because a lot of stuff that's getting tabled that needs to be addressed.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? If not, call it up.
Crockett? Did you say yes? Okay. Thorne?
Yes.
Pepperly? Davis?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
4 yes, 2 absent.
Thank you very much.